Day 3 of the North America West Semifinals did not disappoint.
We like surprising people.
This was the event I've been dreading all weekend.
Good morning. We are starting off with Linda today, and Linda is a particularly interesting workout because we had regionals Linda back in 2018, and now we're doing this semifinals version with dumbbells, and I think we saw it expose some people. Last week we had Brooke Wells go, who did awesome on it in 2018 and then struggled this year with those dumbbells. We know she had an injury now, but it's still just interesting to see how the dumbbells really change this workout. And since it's day 3, we will be having some teams punch their ticket to the CrossFit Games. Let me know which teams from this semifinal you'll be rooting for at the CrossFit Games this August.
I don't miss, I don't play none, I don't diss, I don't say none, I go swish, that's an A1, I stay with no A1. Tell the chef, I said thanks, tell I'm in the bank. Tell my mom I'm living good, tell my kids don't stress a thing. I go back to back on the drops, drop a lot, and she back the bag.
He is celebrating on his way to setting a new event record as he stands it up unofficially 11:06. Colton Mertens.
Trying some more of that Jocko Go. This one is some citrus flavor. I did a whole video about Jocko Go becoming a sponsor and trying it for the first time because I had never heard of it. I didn't try this flavor, so let's see. Okay, that is much better than the one I actually did try. I don't remember what that was. It was like Mayhem something. But this Citrus Psycho, much better.
These bags, you can't believe them. I never saw the country, but the money comes from Sweden. I meet them, then I leave them. I wake up, fight my demons. I never grew my circle, I can trust you with my freedom. Give me locked down, keep you locked out. Only when it's here, you look pop now. I get drops now, on the top now. In the wintertime, still go top down. I get free. I don't go bust and I go play Jane, watch me ski. Yeah, I see you now, I could tell you watching me. I go ghost, but tell me I'm more like his lead. Rockstar, baby, turn pop star. I don't miss, I don't play none, I don't diss, I don't say none. I go switch, that's an A1. I stay on the A1. Tell the chefs, I said thanks, tell I'm in the bank. Tell my mom I'm living good, tell my kids don't stress a thing. I go back to back on the drops, drop a lot, and she packed the bag. She shot to be dropped.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
You were concerned, didn't really know how today was going to go.
Yeah.
How did that start for you?
It was a good start. I was happy how I executed it. I felt on the round of 9, I felt my back for a second, and I was like, okay, let's see what we got. But I'm just happy to get through it, and we'll just see how I recover for the next workout.
Yeah, what goes through your head when you feel your back?
It used to be I went straight to victimized mindset of like, woe is me, this sucks. Why am I feeling this? Why do I have to feel back pain? But I think I've been able to shift my mindset the last couple of years, and it's not ignore it, but it's like, it's okay. Like, you're gonna be fine, and you're gonna make it through. It's just about being kind to yourself instead of punishing yourself more when your back already feels a certain way. So, you can apply that with any injury, but mine specifically with my back. So, yeah, just being kind. Yeah. Thank you.
Like the biggest takeaway from Rogue that you're able to implement here the second time around?
I don't know if it's like a specific thing. I was just definitely super nervous and fangirly at Rogue, and I think I was kind of just going into that for fun as like a off-season competition, and those girls were not having a fun off-season competition. They were very serious, so I learned a lot about like not fangirling, just staying in your zone. And definitely out here it's hard to like not chase after someone right next to you. You just have to stay in your game plan. I think that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned being next to people so like good at this.
All right, next event, some running and a heavy barbell. We got snatches. What are you looking to hit?
I don't know. I think I'd be happy with over 200, but it's not a lot of time to hit a max lift, but I think it's going to be fun, and I'd be happy with over 200.
Hey, so next question. How badly do you beat Jacob in workouts on a daily average?
Well, in the one workout he does with me a day, 2 minutes or more.
Jacob, how are you feeling?
You probably answered this already, but did you know going into that workout that you could win it?
I honestly didn't expect to win. I thought top 10, top 5 would be I'd be happy with that, and I knew it was like a good workout for me, especially after comparing my time to last week's event, but yeah, I definitely wasn't expecting to win it, so that was super exciting.
How do you feel during it? You look so composed.
Yeah, I honestly thought, like, at first they were telling me to slow down because they thought I was going out too hot, but I felt really good throughout it, and I think just I did it in practice, so I knew what paces to do, and so I was just kind of calm and collected, trying to stay composed, because I feel like that's the biggest thing when doing a workout like that.
Great job, and good luck with the rest of the day.
Thank you.
I thought it was going to be an exciting one, and I was definitely right. Colton Mertens pulled off the win for the men's side of things, and I think that bodes great for him this weekend because he has got a second place finish in the second event yesterday, and now a first. Not sure how he's going to do on the running we have coming up or the max snatch, but a first and a second puts him in a great place to be in a fight for a position to go to the CrossFit Games in Madison. And then on the women's side, we had 17-year-old Olivia Kerstetter win her heat and the event overall, and she just looked so composed and confident the entire time. And I feel like she is an athlete we are going to continue to see winning events throughout the future. This was just the beginning. She may end up punching her ticket as an individual this year as opposed to as a team, and she's going to have her name called as the #1 athlete in heats and in tests for a long time to come. So it was awesome to see that. And Arielle, Loewen, Alex Kazan had really strong showings. Alex Kazan is in first after 3 tests. So she's looking great this weekend. And she's also a fairly young athlete that I think has a really high ceiling, and we're just starting to see her do really well. So I'm excited to see the next individual event. We have 200 points up for grabs. That's probably going to change things a lot. So it's going to be an exciting afternoon.
We the top 10, UGK the major way, not play it don't stop here. Traffic lights, we going, know the time until the clock hit. Hands on roll, we doing digi to the whole block clear. Yo, what you got there? Oh, did you not hear? And he's taking over and we got the whole shop, yeah. Heard she wanna know.
Event 5 for the teams just wrapped, second to last event. Things are really starting to take form, and we're getting an idea of who's going to be punching their ticket to the CrossFit Games later today. So we had Rhino CrossFit Dogs, who were in a qualifying position, but not super safe from the cut line, won that event. They looked great, super strong, were very much ahead going into the 3rd round of cleans, and it looked like no one was going to catch them, and no one did. So Rhino CrossFit Dogs Bulldogs taking the W on that one. The 2 teams, 3 teams even that we saw in first, this seemed to be more of a damage control event. So in first throughout the weekend, we've had Misfits and we've had Invictus, and neither really blew this event out of the water. It just seemed like they were trying to get a competitive enough score not to hurt their chances of qualifying, and Omnia didn't do anything super impressive on this event either. So it's going to be interesting to see what the leaderboard looks like once all those scores are in. I got chicken tenders. Listen, health is not the name of the game this weekend. Test 4 and 5 was very exciting, and that's because we had Pat Vellner and Brent Fikowski battling it out on event 5, and just fun to see those guys who we know are 2 friends in real life battling it out on the floor, running after each other. I kind of thought that Fikowski would have the edge there because he's taller, but it ended up being Patty V who pulled out the win and made it across the finish line first, although I believe Fikowski beat him on the lift. So you win some, you lose some. Test 4 and 5 for the women ended up not ending with quite as exciting as a moment as we saw from Pat Vellner and Brent Fikowski, but still some impressive finishes. On the women's side, we saw Hannah Black hit a 2:15 snatch, and the room just erupted when she hit it, especially because she's a relatively unknown athlete. You're going to hear from her in just a second, but she has a very interesting story. I'm going to let her tell it to you, though. And then we had Katrin David's daughter, an athlete trying to make a comeback, coming in second overall, but first in her heat for event 5, or test 5, which was the snatches and then sprint. So some big moves on day 2, which is moving day.
How do you feel about that workout?
Very good. I was really nervous because I had a little elbow injury coming into this, but no pain. So I am very excited.
How do you feel about tomorrow?
I'm really excited. This was the event I've been dreading all weekend, so now I can breathe and smile more than I was already.
Which event do you like better tomorrow?
The handstand walk one. I love getting upside down. It's really fun.
Did you get my nose?
We went into it and the practice went really well, and a couple of times I hit 2:15 as my last number and just ran out of time. So when we got here, I didn't even expect to be here. So I've been full send, taking risks, doing whatever I can the whole week. lose. So I'm like absolutely no pressure, just having fun. And like, I love being out here. Like, it's a dream come true to even be here. So like, knowing that in my head, like I go into each event with no pressure on me, because like anything that I do out here is just extra. Like, I'm here for the experience. This funny story is that I wasn't even gonna do the individual qualifiers, but I needed more experience doing qualifiers because they make me anxious. And my coach was like, well, if we're gonna tape the floor and we're gonna video you, you better like pay your $50 to get your name on the leaderboard. And I was like, that sounds super lame, but fine, whatever, I'll do it. And then like things just kind of happened, and I'm here now, and I've had the time of my life. So tomorrow is gonna be a good day. I think the 6th or 7th work, the one with the sandbag is gonna be really good for me. I'm pumped about that one. I love a heavy sandbag. Workout 6 is gonna be an experience. It's a lot of gymnastics, and honestly, I'm just excited to get to try it out there on the floor with the big girls. So yeah, thank you so much. Oh, do you want an interview? Oh, for you.
I've been to myself, just me lately. I don't need a lot. No. Just me and the fam, few friends ain't playing. I don't speak a lot, and I can't stop. And I can't stop. And I can't stop. And I can't stop. I'm that cash money getter, big show stopper. 4 kids having no chain rocker. Make my business, work my business, count them digits, earn them winnings. I see you in my rear view and you been trying. So
What was it like coming into this? You know, Invictus was the favorite. You guys ended up on top. What was your headspace like going into the weekend?
We like surprising people. We knew from the start we had the potential, but this isn't the end game. We know we still, what we want to do is beat them in Madison. Yeah.
What has to happen now when you go back to the gym to do that, to beat them in Madison again?
I think this weekend exposed some weaknesses. We know what we need to work on. I think we're more motivated now than ever to tackle those weaknesses and really work on both individual fitness, but also synchro and team chemistry and all of it.
Well, good luck in Madison. Thank you.
Day 3 of the North America West semifinals did not disappoint. We had teams punch their tickets to the games, and then we also had some shaking up on the leaderboard for the individual men and individual women. But those people still have more events to go. The teams, they are done. So we're gonna start by reviewing what happened with the teams. And it ended up being a dramatic ending because the top 3 teams all tied for points at the end of the weekend. So they had to go to tiebreakers to determine who won, and the winning team ended up being a team that I went back and forth on whether or not they could win all weekend. Like, if you look back at the clips, you'll see moments of me talking about this team winning and then talking about thinking that they probably wouldn't win. That is CrossFit Franco's Misfits, and they ended up winning 3 tests, which is what helped them to break that points tie. But they were tied with CrossFit Invictus and CrossFit Omnia. And CrossFit Invictus, when they were announced in the 2nd place position, looked pretty disappointed. Invictus definitely came here to win this event and were not happy with 2nd. But they can use that to propel themselves to do better at the games, because I know their goal for the entire season is to win the CrossFit Games. That is still on the table. You don't have to win semis to do that. Semis is just a box you need to check. You need to get in that top 10 and get there, and all the numbers reset after that. So CrossFit Invictus could still win the games. You know who else could? CrossFit Franco's Misfits. They could possibly win the games too, because I think they also have their sights set on that as well. And CrossFit Franco's Misfits is a newer team than Invictus. Those Invictus athletes all competed and were on the podium at last year's games, but they seem to be gelling well, and you just saw the interview I did with them. They have plans to go back and make themselves
even better, but they had all top 10 finishes. They had 2 8ths as their worst finishes, but one of their worst finish events was the same worst finish as Invictus. Both the teams struggled on the heavy lifting event, and part of the reason they took an 11th on the clean event is because Jorge Hernandez has an injured hamstring and wasn't able to contribute to the team in the way he usually would be able to. So I would think that Invictus should take this loss, and it's not really a loss because they're still on the podium and they're going to the CrossFit Games. But they should know that they were not in the right state to win, and they almost did, even with that injury. So they're gonna come into the games, I think, better than they were here, but they were still really good. CrossFit Franco's Misfits was just a little bit better, and marginally better because they had the exact same points. And one more team had the exact same points. That is CrossFit Omnia, and they were more consistent all weekend, kind of hovering around that 3rd position, and didn't really ever take the top of the leaderboard like we saw with Invictus and Misfits going back and forth. But a solid performance from Omnia to now punch their tickets to CrossFit Games, where, like I said, everything resets and they may be in the hunt for the podium as well. So I'm just gonna quick read through all of the teams that qualified because they all deserve a little acknowledgement, but I will say, although some of the positions shifted after the last event, all of the 10 teams that were in the top 10 going into the final event were in the top 10 after it. So we have CrossFit Kilo 2 in 4th, Coda CrossFit Redemption in 5th, 6th is CrossFit Invictus Unconquerable, 7th is Rhino CrossFit Dogs, 8 is CrossFit Invictus Sea of Green, so we've got 3 Invictus teams. 9 is Ironhorn CrossFit Ascend, and 10 is CrossFit Believe, who struggled on that last event, but managed to do enough to stay 1 point ahead of the 11th place finish team, Verdant CrossFit. So moving on to the men, and in first place, we have Patrick Vellner, and he looked great today. And overall, he's got solid finishes across the board. He has his 15th, but other than that, 3rd, 6th, 1st. And he crushed that workout 5, beating Brent Fikowski, sprinting across the finish line, and they gave each other a hug at the end. So cool to see them battle it out on that event. But I think Vellner's gonna be hard to beat because I think tomorrow's workouts work well for him too. We have a lot of gymnastics. He has a gymnastics background, and we have that sandbag carry, and he's got those very long arms. So I think that's also going to help on the sandbag carry. I think it looks very likely now that Pat Vellner could be our leader throughout the rest of the weekend and be at the top of the podium at the end of all 7 tests. So right behind him, just 13 points, is Brent Fikowski, who has also had a really great weekend minus 1 event. He did not do well on Linda. That was a 26th finish for him. But other than that, he's got a 1st, 5th, 2nd. Very, very consistent. In 2 second places on the back-to-back workouts. I think that is a great representation of his fitness, being able to lift heavy and run very fast. I'm excited to see Brent go to the CrossFit Games and what he can do there, and hopefully have a bounce back year after having a not so great year at the Games last year. Although I do think semis might be better suited for him than the Games because he can plan more for the semis test. In 3rd, we have Cole Grieshaber, and he was in 1st at one point, and I think he's going to make it to the CrossFit Games, but I kind of think he's not going to move any farther up. I think he only will go down a little bit, but he'll be in a clear qualifying position through the next 2 tests. In 4th, we have Chandler Smith, who looked great on Linda, just losing out to Colton Mertens, and then he hit a very heavy 295 snatch for a 5th place finish. It would be awesome to see him get back because his wife is on CrossFit Invictus Unconquerable, who punched their tickets today, so it would be awesome to see the couple go together to the CrossFit Games. After that, we have Samuel Quant, Nick Matthews in 6th, and then in 7th, Justin Medeiros, which is kind of surprising to see him so far down. The champ, a guy who's won a ton of in-person competitions recently. He's won the games twice. He's won his semifinal last year. He won Rogue, and I think that streak is going to come to an end. He is currently 102 points out of first place, and I just don't think there's any possible way to overcome that without the people in front of him just collapsing. And there's too many people in front of him, I believe, to have that big of a collapse on 2 events. So maybe he can make a push for third. He is close enough to that, but I don't think there's any chance of Justin ending up on top of the podium. Does that mean he's not going to be the front runner for the games? No, he still won it last year, and I think the games is a better test for him. So I wouldn't read into this too much. I don't think he wouldn't qualify, although he's only 2 spots up from the cut line. The cut line is 9. I don't believe he will hit that cut line, but it is another thing to look out for tomorrow, because if he was to have a collapse on just one of the events, it could be enough to take him out. I don't foresee that happening, though. I'll just say that. And then in 8th, we have Jack Rosema. And then 9th, we have Mitchell Stevenson, who has been falling since the first 2 tests. And I would guess he's likely to fall out of the top 9, the 9 positions that go to the games. That's my prediction there. Moving on to some people that are currently out of a qualifying position, but I believe could possibly make it there. And there really is only a couple, because after a certain point, the point spreads become a little greater. So the people that I think have a legitimate shot of still qualifying, who are currently not in a qualifying position, and my guess would be at least one of these people qualify, and those would be Colton Mertens and Cole Sager, possibly John Wood. Colton Mertens may be able to pull off something big in these last 2 events. I don't feel strongly that he will be able to, but I'm excited to see if he can put on a show. And then we have Cole Sager in 12th. And Cole has just pulled off lots of comebacks in his 9 years of qualifying for the CrossFit Games. So if there was anyone I would pick to be able to know when you got to buckle down and win the thing, it would be Cole Sager. So I would definitely look for Cole Sager to make a move on the final day of competition. Moving on to the women, and the woman who is in first right now, you heard from a little bit earlier, and was the front runner going into the weekend, qualifying for the event in the top position, and that is Arielle Loewen. And she has been fairly consistent over the weekend. She hasn't won an event, but she's had fairly solid finishes. She had that 20th in the first event, but that was her worst event. And after that, she had a 2nd, 5th, 14th, and 10th. There's been a lot of jostling on the women's side. You don't have anyone dominating with all top 10 finishes. So you can take worse finishes in this event than last week and still win it. Because last week at North America East, we saw Emma Carey never took worse than, I believe, 10th. And a lot of people here have taken worse than 10th. I think all of the women have. You don't need to be at the very top in the events to win this semifinal. A lot of the athletes here are so evenly matched that everyone's battling with each other and nobody's just a front runner like we saw last week. And the lead has been switching a whole ton. Second is interesting. Second is Katrin Davidsdottir, and I think a lot of people are excited to see the former 2-time champion back in a qualifying position. She was in a qualifying position yesterday as well, so she stayed pretty solid on the leaderboard. And I believe at this point, with the amount of points she has, she is very likely to make it to the games. Although I will say the points from 1st to 10th are tighter in this semifinal than we saw last week. So first Arielle, second Katrin Davidsdottir, third Alex Gazan, who took a poor finish on the snatch. That's not her best lift, even though she's crazy strong. I'm sure as she gets better, she's still very young, only 21 years old, that she'll become more proficient in that lift because she does have the strength for it. I just don't think she is there yet. Also, might have hurt her coming off the runner compared to some of the other athletes. In fourth, we have Christine Kohlenbranner, who put up a 205-pound snatch. That's her best event, and that's what's really keeping her in a qualifying position. After that, in fifth, Bethany Shadburne. And you've heard from her in this video, and I posted a previous video with her talking about how she came into this event not really knowing how she would do and not knowing if her back would hold up. And she's looking really solid. Fifth place right now is pretty good for her. And I'm optimistic that she may be making her way back to the CrossFit Games after missing it for 2 years. One, because she couldn't compete because of an illness, and the second time because of a back injury, 2021 and 2022. In sixth place, Hannah Black, and you heard her story a little bit earlier as well. She backfilled into the semifinal, and she did really well in the first event. And in my head, I'm like, all right, she got a third place in the first event. That's probably it. But she has stayed very solid and took an event win in the snatch with a 2:15 snatch. So she may very well be going to the CrossFit Games after getting into semis with a backfill, which is a pretty cool story. In seventh, we have Olivia Kerstetter, and she's done very well having an event win as well. She finished first in Linda and looked like a veteran doing it at 17 years old. And she might be skipping out on the team games this year for the individuals, kind of like we saw Mal O'Brien do, and Emma Lawson and Emma Carey, future of the sport. Eighth, Kelly Baker, who a lot of people were excited to see come back to competition this year as an individual, and she had the biggest benefit from that back-to-back event. I believe she was sitting in like 16th or something after 3 events, and managed to make her way into the top 10. 10 women are qualifying for the games in this region. Ninth is Emily White, and holding that 10th place position is Chloe Wilson. She is a firefighter. A lot of people have been big fans of hers. So it could be interesting to see someone who has a full-time job as a first responder making the way to the CrossFit Games, and she's been close, I believe, twice prior to this. So it'd be pretty monumental for her finally to break that barrier and get to the CrossFit Games. Now a couple people that are sitting outside and what their chances are to get inside. We have Emily Rolfe in 13th, and she is just 12 points out of that 10th place position, so she certainly has a shot, although I'm not positive the next events we're seeing are her best events, but certainly has a shot to make it back to the games. Danny Spiegel in 14th. She was very low after day 1 and has chipped her way back into it and has a shot if she can really do well and just be fearless on the events and really go for it. She does have a shot still to make it into the top 10. Now as we head down, these women really have to make some big moves to get back in the conversation. Lauren Fisher, she's at 270 points, which means she is 34 points out. We've seen bigger comebacks, but it is a bit of a hole. In 18th, Sydney McAlishan, she's just 3 points back from Lauren Fisher. So if she could really knock something out, she may have a chance, but I'm not super optimistic about that. In 21st, Bailey Arielle, and this one's an interesting one because I believe she could have competed in the East if she registered with an address there. She does a lot of mayhem stuff and I believe lives in Cookeville primarily, so she may have been better off in the East. They had one more spot as well. And down at 32nd, this one breaks my heart a little bit, Rebecca Fuselier. I don't think, looking at her points, there's much of a shot of her making it to the games. I think she'd basically have to win the next 2 events to really have a shot at it. And even then, that may not be enough depending on what the rest of the women did, especially the women that are ahead of her. So I don't think we're gonna see Rebecca Fuselier going back a second time in a row, but it's not impossible. There is technically enough points. It's just extremely, extremely, extremely unlikely. Like a 1% chance. And that's a bummer, but hopefully she'll battle anyway, and you never know. And we spoke about Freya Moosberger in my last vlog, and while she is 5 spots higher than she was yesterday, between 50th and 45th, there's really not a shot at making it to the games. Anyway, that is it for today. I will see you again tomorrow. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe. Like I said, another one coming tomorrow. Plan to go to the CrossFit Games and do something similar as well. So if you're enjoying it, hit that button. Like this video if you had a good time, and I'll see you in the next one.